Glad everybody's here. And as always, say thank you to the city of Wilder for allowing us to use the space here. They were just, they just fell over themselves. When I met with Terry Vance this morning and picked up the key, he said, "What do you need for this room?" I said, "Well, some tables maybe." He got on the phone immediately and called building services or whoever and said, "I need 6 tables up door, or, you know, up in the council room." So, I mean, it just gets done, and they do a great job for us. So, Mark is handing out ballots. Tonight is election night. So if you would, hand those, or fill those out, and we'll run around a little bit later and pick up the ballots. With that, let's get started with the minutes from last month, from Richard.
On October 9th, we met in this same building, but in a community room downstairs, for a presentation by Charlie Dawson. Steve welcomed everybody at 7:02. I read the previous meeting minutes. We then gave the treasurer's report with a balance of $11,484.12. I then read about recent donations. Steve updated membership. It was about 312 at the time. And he also said any letters, any articles for the next newsletter would be due by December 1st. Shirley reported 41 more veterans added for a total of 16,394. She's also working on a flyer for the next essay contest. Mark reported to light up the lawn. He had 26 trees for Wilder and 71 for Alexandria at the time, but needs some more T-posts to help put the trees on. Steve reported that the Campbell County Senior Picnic in September had gone well. A very good crowd, and a good time was had by all. He also reported that the History Sleuths project had recently started with the kickoff meeting. It's to encourage research on historic buildings throughout Campbell County to get more modern surveys than what's currently on record. He also announced a Cincinnati Gives charity donation that the society will be participating in December. Steve told us one of the junior winners of the essay contest last year actually ended up winning a webbing photo contest this year in 2 categories. So it's good to see our young people doing well elsewhere too. Steve announced there's a King Records documentary coming on PBS in the next couple of days, and that board elections would be the next month here with Jane Lester and Ken Moore up for re-election, but Ken choosing not to run. At that point, he handed it over to Charlie Dawson for a presentation on Native American artifacts.
The month with $11,484.12, and 4 additional renewals for $48. And the Christmas tree fundraiser raised $1,050 for a net income of $1,098. We paid the copier charges for the maintenance contract at $412, and we paid the lease on the copier for $116.56. Net expenses were $528.56. Ending balance $12,053.56.
All right, thanks, Glenn. And Jan, you are up with...
Okay, membership is at 312, and most of you who are current members, if we have an email address for you, you should have received a notice that our dues are increasing for 2026. A lot of our costs are going up, especially with printing costs and our copier, rentals, the cost for keeping up the museum and the research library. Everything is costing us more. So we made the decision to raise the dues for 2026 to $15 per person. If a couple joins together, you get a savings. You only have to pay $25 for the couple. Life memberships are the same at $150, which means you never have to remember to pay your dues again. And for current members, if you rejoin before the end of this year, you can still pay the $12 rate. So it's a savings to you for this one for the coming year. After that, it'll be $15 and $25 per person and couple. Okay, and we hope that doesn't hurt anybody too much. We still think our society is a great value. So, the newsletter will be out at the end of December. It'll be your January 2026 issue. It will have membership information in it. We have other levels. You can be a business sponsor, you can be a technology sponsor at slightly higher rates, or a corporate sponsor if you so choose. We also, mostly our board member sends me articles for the newsletter. I just got one tonight from Leo Christian gave me an article. So anybody can give me articles for the newsletter and I will get them printed. We also have a little work that we do for the Neighbors of Alexandria magazine. You only get it if you live in Alexandria. And they requested a few years ago a very short article from us each month on something that historic that happened in Alexandria or the nearby area. This year, we are highlighting in that magazine our one-room schools, of which there were many in Campbell County altogether, but in the Alexandria, there were a dozen or so. So we're going to pick one each month. And I've asked the board members, and they've signed up, some of them, to do a little article. And I need more people to do this. It only has to be a 200 to 300 word article. That's like 2 big paragraphs or 3 little ones. That is not a lot. And we have all the information you would need to write a little article on a one-room schoolhouse. So I have a list here that I won't pass this around, but if you are interested, see me afterwards. I have a sample article that I've already written for January's issue of this magazine, and you can see what it looks like, and we can make arrangements to meet up at the society, and I will give you, we have 2 folders on each school. One of them is teacher record books that lists the children and the teachers who taught there. It lists their parents. So that's valuable genealogical information right there. We also have a folder that Ken Reese compiled on each school in the whole county that tells about the school itself, where it was, what it was made from. Some of them were log buildings, okay? So we have that, sometimes we have a picture. We have all the information you would need. So please come see me afterwards if you would like to do a month, and it wouldn't be due. I have people signed up for the first couple months of the year, so you wouldn't need to get it to me until like after the first of the year. So come see me about that later. And correspondence. The Kentucky Museum and Heritage Association sends us a newsletter because we're a member of it. And this time they had a little blurb on the Behringer Crawford Museum's Christmas display. It has actual costumes from the movie White Christmas, because our neighbor, Mason County native Rosemary Clooney, was in that movie. So they have a beautiful Christmas display at Behringer Crawford if you're interested. We got almost $100 from the Kroger Community Fund. If you go to Kroger, and pretty much all of you probably do at some time or other, you can designate us to receive a percentage of your total bill. You don't pay anymore, but you sign up and Kroger sees that and they add all that up on a quarterly basis. Glenn gets, this month it was, or this quarter it was $97.41. That helps us out, you know, so if anybody wants to do that, we can give you the instructions. That's all I've got.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know where to go. Okay, Charlene, you want to talk about the essay contest?
Okay, the essay flyer is available up here. All the flyers and information letters are mailed to all the schools. Now, we know sometimes the teachers don't get this information to the students. So if any of you have a grandchild that you thought might be interested in this, we've got flyers up here. We appreciate it if you take one and pass them out. Or maybe, none of us have great-grandchildren ready for that, so we'll just go with the grandchildren, okay?
Neighbors' kids. No, neighbors' kids. Neighbors' kids.
Oh yeah, your neighbor's kid, I forgot about the neighbor. I'm gonna do the veterans report. For the month of October, we had 116 veterans. Now, if you're not surprised by this number, you should be. And I'm going to explain to you, because in the last several months, we've only had a few veterans come in. So for October, there were 2 from Alexandria, and that's Patty and Marcia working on that. There are 4 that were current that Marcia finds in the obituaries in the newspaper. 1 was dropped off at the office. 20 of them came from Grandview Cemetery, which I think Marcia and Patty are working on. There was 1 Revolutionary War. There was 34 that came from older newspapers or we accidentally stumbled across it. The big one is 54 Civil War veterans. Now you would think we had them all, right? We don't. This is a thanks to Richard, our treasurer.
No.
He's been researching the Campbell County Civil War veterans for years. And he compiled a big list of them, which he shared with us. And so we've been going through it one at a time to make sure they're either on the list or they're not on the list, and whatever other information we can find. So as of the end of October, we had 54 veterans, Civil War veterans that were added to the collection. That's going to probably be about the same every month, because that is a huge database that he sent to us. So thank
And
you.
there's even more that I didn't send yet.
Years of research that he did for us. Anyway, that makes the total 165, I'm going to back up, 16,511.
There's a lot of work that goes into compiling those lists, because once they get the names, then they all get researched and then they get filed. And I can't tell you how many binders we have up there filled with veterans' names on there, but it's like 3 shelving units filled with veterans' names. It's probably one of the largest collections in the state, I do believe. So kudos to everybody involved with that. Sharon, do you have anything for Sharon? No? Okay. Mark? What?
Starting with the Wilder numbers, they've got 19 returning and 8 new orders for a total of 27 this year. So I don't know when they're planning on putting their lights on. Alexandria, we got 61 returning and 14 new ones for a total of 75 out there. That's up from 67 last year. So the grand total is 102 for this year. The lighting down here at Wilder will be on Monday, December the 1st at probably 7:30, whenever they're.
Yeah, they do a short council meeting, and then right after that, they light their tree in the lobby here, and then we all go outside and they light up our trees then.
And then the lighting in Alexandria will be on Sunday, November the 30th, at about 5:30, 5:40, and then it gets dark. So
But the office is gonna open.
And then we'll have our open house, that'll start at 7:30, and then.
No, 3:30.
Oh. And then this year, we're gonna close the museum in the upstairs at 5 o'clock to allow everybody to clear out and have our workers come down and see the lighting. And if any member wants to come and help showcase our collection at the open house, just let me know or Steve know. And if you want to donate or eat a cookie, you can still come out to the lighting on the 30th of November. So, and we started this with 14 trees 5 years ago, and this year we're up to 75, so that's an increase of 435.7%.
Good job.
Good job. Okay, so that's through all the reports. Couple of things to bring up. Glenn has been going through, we record all of our meetings, we videotape them, like that's what Charlene's doing tonight. There is a huge library of them at Campbell Media. But the Campbell Media website is a little difficult to navigate. So Glenn has established a YouTube channel for us.
All right.
And we are going to have all of those meetings located on our website. There'll be a link to the YouTube channel on there. You've done how many? 19 so far, I think, Glenn?
Right.
19 so far, and we're getting more from Campbell Media. So keep an eye out. You'll be able to see those probably in the next month or so. You'll be able to see those on our website, which I think will make it a lot easier for people to see what the topic is and who the speaker was, and all those things will be on there. The idea is we want people to be able to go back, if they're researching that topic, they'll be able to go back and see what was said at those meetings. So I think that'll be most beneficial. We'll have our meetings on there. We'll also have our Veterans of Valor interviews on there. Our Next Door Neighbor program that we do, all of those interviews will be on there. And anything else we do, we'll be able to post on there, and we'll make it easily accessible on our website. In addition to that, I think I told you last month, we've made an agreement with the Kenton County Library to post our pictures there. We finally signed the agreement. It took some back and forth on that, and they're going through, we have to do background checks to be able to do it and all that kind of stuff. So they're going through all that. And we're gonna send about 25 pictures over as a test and let them make sure that's working okay, because they have to put our watermark on them and all that kind of stuff. And then we'll start loading them with a whole bunch, so you'll be able to see some of our 35,000 pictures on the Kenton County Library on their Faces and Places program, which has, I think they have 125 photographs on there. So I encourage you to go to the Kenton County Library and look up Faces and Places, and you'll find all sorts of stuff on there. All right. This is a brand new program for us, Cincinnati Gives. This is, the Cincinnati Magazine has been doing this for 10 years now. It's a program, as we get into the giving months, as they call these, the November and December, this is a place where you can do it. You get your tax return or your tax receipt, you get all that kind of stuff. But it gives us an opportunity as a nonprofit to potentially earn prizes. So if you give $25 or $100 or $1,000 or $1 million, we'll take that too. But there are all sorts of different prizes that are available, so it can make your donation go further with us. There's competition. There's about 163 nonprofits that are in this now, but Procter & Gamble has donated the prize money, and I'd love to see us do well with this thing. I'll be putting this, as we get a little bit closer, I'll be putting this on all the social media, you'll be getting emails. Even if you can't donate, share it with people. Send it off to somebody else, because you never know who might be able to utilize that. And, you know, some of us have done very, very well this month, or this year, and they're looking for a place to donate money, to get the tax deduction. We're a good place for that. We can certainly use it. So when you start seeing these on Facebook and email and this, that, and the other, please just share it with somebody else, make a comment on it, positive comment, some way that keeps it coming to the top so that people see it, and that's how we're going to get the best response to it. Mark, you want to run and get election ballots again? I think everybody's filled those out. There weren't a whole lot of decisions to be made.
How many veterans?
Last month I told you about a new PBS documentary that was out there on King Records. I just saw there is a new Ken Burns one out in honor of the 250th anniversary of the country that he's doing on the American Revolution, and that the first one is a six-part documentary. It starts this Sunday, I think. But I saw an interview with Ken Burns about it, and it looks to be typical Ken Burns, pretty phenomenal. Well worth watching. All here tonight? I'm on Paul's here tonight. For the last several years, we have participated in the Wreaths Across America program. So I have some flyers up here. We as a group have bought 5 wreaths that will be at Evergreen. On December the 13th, they'll be placing wreaths in 2 veteran areas at the cemetery, and they need some more wreaths to do that. I think it's $17 for a wreath, Glenn? $17. We'll get you in contact with Paul, and he can get you taken care of on that if you're interested in doing that. We have an opening in our phone caller list. Janet Ginter oversees all of that, and I think we're probably one of the only groups that does that. Anybody who asks for us to call them, we put out, Janet arranges all that, and we give you a call and a message about our meetings or any events that are coming up. And one person has dropped off of that list for a variety of reasons, so she needs somebody else. If anybody's interested, it only takes less than an hour a month. Would you say, Janet?
Yeah, you get maybe 5 people. Maybe
Yeah.
you call 5 people and that's it.
5 or 6 people you have to call, is all. And 9 times out of 10, you're just gonna get an answering machine. So if anybody's interested in doing that, see Janet, raise your hand, Janet. Okay?
And we'll give you the names and telephone numbers of the people you will be calling.
Yeah, she makes it real nice and easy for you, okay? With some of these things that we're doing with the website, we've also learned, we had our website redone a couple of years ago, and it looks fantastic, but we don't have anybody proficient in, what's it called, WordPress, that can keep it updated and maintain it and all those things. If anybody knows anybody that is proficient in those and is willing to give us a couple hours a month to just post on there when our meetings are and when events are, and like when our Christmas tree stuff starts and when the essay contest starts, anybody knows anybody that's willing to do that, love to talk to them. Just have them give me a buzz down at the office, and we'll get them all set up. Carol, you want to come up and...
Thank you. Hi,
am Carol Kirkwood. A lot of you know that I work with the all of the historic sites and organizations all over northern Kentucky. The goal is to get everybody to work together so that we can make promote history and advocate for history and get more money for history. I want to do two things. I wanted to report that this, especially with your membership report tonight, this is by far the most active historical society in certainly northern Kentucky, but any of the other historical societies that I know of that I have worked with. You're more active, you have more things going. A lot of that has to do with the fact that other historical societies have government support more than what you all do, or library support, which you all do not have. So you've had to do this. But you've done a really good job, thanks to Steve's leadership and the consistency of the people. I mean, you all are so far ahead, it's incredible. Still have to work on that public awareness thing because, which is exactly what's happening with the Christmas tree program. That's just fabulous for public awareness. But please, you all, if you have neighbors you could talk to or just in your everyday life, remember to mention the museum, suggest people go and visit. You know, if you are in other organizations, perhaps they might like to have somebody come and do a program about it, or they might like to come and do a program with us. So it's all about networking. Try and keep that in mind in your everyday life so that we can get some, you know, public awareness going here. The other thing I wanted to tell you, is anybody aware of the Collections 21 card collection in Early? Anybody seen that? I cannot believe it. You have, Jan?
I've not been in, but I've seen it. I've gone past and
It is amazing. It is absolutely amazing. If you it's a collection of cars, it's a private collector, and he has not, he doesn't want to be known who it is, but what he's done is opened up this collection, and a charity staffs of volunteers come in, staff it 2 afternoons a month, or 2 days a month, or a week. Friday and Saturday afternoon. I think it's from 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock, I think, or noon to 3, something like that. And then they get the money, and it's a suggested donation of $15, the best $15 you'll spend in a long time. It is a fabulous. It's like 4 warehouses full of absolutely cherry cars, going back all the way to the very earliest cars, to the hot rods, the muscle cars. It's all American made. There might be 1 or 2 foreign, but most it's American made. It is incredible. And we had some visitors from Germany, and just as an aside, took them there and couldn't get them out. They took over 150. They loved it. It is worth you going. But I just spoke with the director of the charity that runs this. It's HONK, which is Housing Opportunities of Northern Kentucky. You don't know anything about that. They basically buy, you know, houses and flip them for low-income people so that they are able to get into home ownership. So it's a worthy cause. It's well done. It's a very well-run cause, but this is something you all really have to see. And I'm surprised none of you have ever even heard of it except for Jan.
That's got a place on Kent Lands Road.
Kent Lands Road.
Yeah.
You've seen it?
Okay, I've
You've been in it?
Tell them how great it is.
It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
I've seen my first car I ever owned, I've seen the second car I ever owned.
Well, I'm telling you, it is worth it. But here's why I'm bringing it up tonight. Is in December, on the week of December 8th, they're gonna be open regular hours, but every day that week. Usually it's just Friday and Saturday. But that week in December, it's every day that week, from the 8th on.
Pearl Harbor Day.
So if you all have designs ongoing and can't make it on, the regular days, then I would suggest you take this opportunity. And if you have family in town or whatever, take the opportunity. I'm trying to work with that group also, because that's historic. Those cars are historic, so that's another way for us to try and network. So support them. We'll try and get them to support us. I'm trying to get them maybe come in and do a program. Haven't really developed that yet, but still, trying. So anyway, take advantage of that, and just know you all are really kicking it in the history world. You all are doing great.
Very good.
Just listed out the cars, they're
Clarify, it, make us know, that Ken Land, that's where the Erlanger Library is on one end, the new Kroger, Dixie Highway is on the other, this is kind of right in the middle.
Yeah, Kenton Land. Does anybody know where Kenton Land's road is? Yeah, in Erlanger. Yeah, it's easy to find, good parking, it's great, just go. Collection 21. And it's on, if you go to Google Maps in Erlanger, put in Collection 21, it's on there. Okay? Please?
right against Dixie Highway.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, that's enough from all of us talking. You all came to hear Mr. Columbia talk here, so let me introduce him now. This man has done an incredible amount of research on something I was totally unaware of, had no idea something like this existed, but there were, was it 220 Kentuckians that were involved with this, even though it was a Michigan regiment. There were 220 Kentuckians involved there. 12 of them were Campbell Countyans. So we asked him to come in honor of Veterans Day to come and fill us in on this whole expedition. So may I introduce Jim Columbia to you.
I was so proud to find out just last week that I had a genealogical connection to Campbell County. First time that had ever come up. I had a great 8th or 9th great-grandfather who had, in the 1780s, had bought property in Campbell County. And I thought, I'm going to tell this group about that, and I'm so excited about it. And then I found out yesterday, it's Kenton County. Bank Lake Creek. I knew what Bank Lake Creek was. I've been to the Pioneer Park on that, but it just didn't occur to me that that was old Campbell County, but now Kenton County, so.
Still counts.
Yeah. I appreciate so much the invitation to come here today to tell a story that I'm pretty sure most people are unfamiliar with. I certainly was. But it's appropriate for Veterans Day week and I think appropriate for Campbell County. I'm retired from the Kentucky court system. I worked for the administrative office of the courts for 28 years and worked with juvenile services. Had some good friends in the Campbell County and Kenton County offices. I've always been interested in history. Both my grandfathers were they were great about telling me things about the family or just Kentucky history in general. And so after my retirement, I hoped that I would have the opportunity to maybe add something to Kentucky history And I had a couple of ideas of things that I was interested in, but tonight's subject was not on my radar at all. I don't think they taught much about World War I in Mason County High School, France, that's all I know. They got a lot of Civil War history, but very little World War I. If you were from Michigan, you would know this story. It's legendary in Michigan, especially in the Detroit area. They have many books written about this expedition, memorials, libraries, museums dedicated to it. I brought some of the books that I used in my research. Some of the best books on the subject, I don't have paper copies of because they're available digitally. Were written by the participants. Basically what the story is that early in World War I, before the entry of the United States, the Allied forces, mostly Britain and France, decided to send huge amounts of war materials to northern Russia, to Archangel. And it just so happens that Britain and France had also invested a lot in northern Russia. So they were kind of trying to protect their economic interests. They sent all these war materials there so that they would be available for the Russian army, who was also an ally, to protect themselves from the Germans. Then they began to worry that maybe the Germans would invade and get those war materials and then turn around and use them against the Allies. So they decided to send troops into northern Russia, into Archangel, which is almost at the Arctic Circle, and freezes, at least at that time, for about 8 months of the year. You can't get in or out of there at that time, even with icebreakers. So as the war went on, and Russia left the Allies, they backed out of the war. And this worried the French and the English to the point that they thought this is just wide open for the Germans to come in and take all these munitions and equipment. So they put pressure on President Woodrow Wilson to join them in sending a multinational force into Archangel to protect these supplies. And against his better judgment and with a lot of hesitation, he finally agreed to do so. And he very clearly stipulated the troops that I'm sending to northern Russia are only to be used to protect those materials. They're not to be used to fight in any kind of offensive operations. But he allowed the American troops to be put under British command. One of the very few times that that's ever happened. As a matter of fact, well, I'll get back to that, but anyway, at the same time in Camp Custer, Michigan, there was a new division created, the 85th Division. Had 4 regiments newly created, the 337th Infantry, 338th, 339th, and 340th. These were filled up mostly with Michigan troops. As a matter of fact, the 339th Infantry was almost entirely men from Detroit. That included some Kentuckians who had left Kentucky to go work in the factories of Detroit. So you can kind of say, well, were they really Kentuckians? It's amazing to find that later in life, those guys, almost all of them came back to Kentucky. They were just there to work. At the last minute, these regiments were short of being having full manpower, and they requested that 3,000 troops be transferred up from Camp Taylor in Louisville. And so all these Kentuckians and Indiana men got sent to Camp Custer, divided up into these 4 regiments, and off to France they went. So they thought. They all left together, they left Michigan together, went by train to New York and got on a flotilla of ships and went to England. About that time, General Pershing, who was in charge of the American Expeditionary Force, was given the order to send some troops to North Russia. And he just picked one of these regiments. There was some thought over the years that maybe he picked these men because they were from Michigan and would be used to the cold. But that's kind of been discounted. I think it was just the luck of the draw. They just happened to be there. So he picked the 339th Infantry. And they had no idea that they were getting ready to go to Russia. They were just put on ships and sent north. The rest of the other 3 regiments were sent to France. So about 5,000 troops, hope you can read these, about 5,000 troops were sent to Archangel on ships. That included the 339th Infantry, and had some support units, some medical staff. The 310th Engineer Regiment, those landed at the same time in August of 1918. Many of them didn't know where they were going until they got off the ship. Almost everybody from Campbell County was in the 339th. There was one man from Campbell County who was in the 310th Engineer Regiment, and he was Peter Wagner from 4 Mile. And he had gone into the engineering corps, and just, again, by the luck of the draw, he ended up in northern Russia. On the way there, these ships, they had an outbreak of the Spanish flu. And by the time they landed, dozens were dead or dying, and dozens more were so ill that they couldn't do anything. And one of the stories that I want to come back to is not a Campbell County soldier, but he's from Covington. He lived on the Coursey Pike, and he was sick right off the boat. But I'll come back and talk about his story later. So by the time they docked and got everybody off the boats, they were already about 500 men short due to illness and death. And so they requested some replacement troops to bring them back up to full strength. And so 500 replacement troops were taken from France, from those other 3 regiments. So the guys that thought they were going on to France, about 500 of them were pulled at random, and several of those were from Campbell County. And they ended up there about a month after the other ones had gotten there, about the 1st of October. And at that time, the Davina River, which is the bay there where Archangel stands, froze. So that was it. There was no reinforcements coming in. There was no way out. They were frozen in until the next spring. Going against President Wilson's orders, they were taken off the boat immediately and sent into offensive operations. It turned out that all those materials that they were sent there to guard were gone. They had been taken by the Bolsheviks. These guys stepped off the boat right into the middle of the Russian Civil War and were immediately sent out into the field by the British command. And I hope you can see this map. It's kind of small. It's kind of hard to explain the geography of what they went through. There were basically 6, they were divided up into 6 groups. If you can see this, one group went to the west to Onega, one went east to Pinega. You'll notice maybe in the middle there's railroad. There's only one railroad. there was a railroad group, and the others went down that river, the Davina and the Vega River, and of course some stayed in Archangel. There were really no roads in this area, one or two. There was one railroad, one rail line. You went by the rivers. This was marshy country, and if in the warmer times you went by boat down the river, and then in the winter you just went on the ice of the river. That's how the transportation went. And so these 6 groups were split up. They didn't really fight together. There was no coordination. And the ones that went down the river, they all ran into some combat operations, but the ones that went down the Davina and Vega River really had the worst of it. And some of the things that were unique in the American military history about this expedition, this is the farthest north any American troops have ever been involved in combat. The Arctic Circle is right at the top of that map, right above Archangel. They were involved in combat operations in 40 and 50 below zero temperatures, snow up to your waist. The guns would freeze. Some of the guns were water cooled, the machine guns, and of course those froze instantly. But even the ones that were had oil cooled would freeze. Of course, frostbite was ever present. These soldiers were under British command. Their American equipment was taken away from them. They were given British equipment. They were fed British rations. They were paid in British pounds. And one of the tricks, if you want to call it that the British used was every British officer was given a promotion, a pocket promotion. They had the insignia in their pocket. So if a lieutenant ran up on a colonel, an American colonel, they just pull out a colonel badge and stick it in their hand. So every American officer was always outranked. No matter who you were dealing with, you were outranked. And so if you were an American soldier, you were always under British command. The one exception was the group that went to Panega to the Far East. Because there were no British there, that was the only place they were allowed to fly the American flag. All the others fought under the British flag. But the main thing that's unique about this group is that these are the only American troops ever to engage Russian troops on Russian soil. And that, I had no idea that ever existed. One historian stated that these were the first American victims of the Cold War with communists. And that's who they were fighting, was the Bolsheviks, which was a communist. And the last really unique thing about this was after they left, they were there for a year, and after they left, there was a tremendous effort to recover the bodies of the lost Americans. It's unique in American history. They had about 230 casualties, fatalities while they were there. Quite a few were from illness, but quite a few were from combat. And they made 3 recovery efforts. This was not the United States government. This was veterans groups, VFW, and other veterans groups in Michigan. They made a recovery effort in 1919 after the rest of the troops had left. They went back in 1929 and then again in 1934. At none of those times did the American government have diplomatic relations with the Russians. So it was all informal. And they were able to recover all but 23 of those 230. And 2 of those are Kentuckians whose bodies had never been recovered, allegedly. That's another story. The inspiration for the book that I wrote came from some genealogical work that I was doing about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, I guess, on a soldier from Fleming County. And a man had written a book about the genealogy of this family from Fleming County. And in it, he said that one of the members of this family had died in combat in Russia. And I instantly said, that guy's wrong, you know, that never happened. He's made a mistake. But I'm gonna find out for these people, you know, what actually did happen to their son. And it turned out I found out that that was true, that he had died in combat in Russia. And the more I looked into it, I started to find that there were some veterans of this action from Mason County and Bracken County and Lewis County. Quite a few. And I'm thinking, what in the world is going on here? Why would guys from Fleming and Bracken and Mason County, my area of the state, be fighting in Russia? And that was the beginning of my research. And as I got into it, I found about 220 soldiers. There were others involved who were not soldiers, so civilians and diplomatic members from Kentucky. And there were bits and pieces of this story as you go back and look. There were newspaper articles and things, but nobody had ever really put together this story from the point of view of Kentuckians. They didn't fight any differently from the Michigan troops, but you could tell that they kind of knew they were outsiders in this group. There was many things that pointed to that. So the more information I collected, the more I was able to decide that their story needed to be put together in one place. As I say, there's plenty of books that have been written about this expedition, which was nicknamed the Polar Bear Expedition. Even while they were there, they nicknamed themselves that. And there were stories here and there in those books regarding Kentuckians, regarding the Campbell County men, but nobody ever put them in a combined collection. And so that was my goal. And so it's a big book. It's got 220 characters, which you're not supposed to do. But since it didn't exist anywhere else, I wrote it for those veterans. And amazingly, they still have children who are alive today. And when I was able to get in touch with those people, it was very emotional to talk to them. They would just cry over the phone. I'd be talking to them, and they were just crying about the memory of their father and the fact that somebody was going to finally tell this story in a coordinated fashion, which kind of put me on the hook, because then I couldn't quit. You know, I told them I was going to do it, and I guess I'm proud of the fact that I finished it. It took 12 years to put it together, not of constant work, but over time. And I don't give myself any credit for this, but I don't think this book could have been written 20 years ago or 10 years ago. The vast majority of the research I did was online, and it just wasn't available then. All the newspapers.com, tremendous ability to research, do text searches, and even the company reports of this regiment are online now. So I was able to just track everybody every day, when they got injured, when they got back to their unit. Probably too much information, but there it is. Of the 220 Kentuckians who identified them by birth or by residence, if they were drafted from Kentucky, or if they came here after the war and resided, or they're buried here. So I was pretty liberal with my use of Kentuckians. The book itself, the story of their time in Russia only takes up the first half of the book. The second half of the book is about the recovery efforts, and there were about 17 who lost their lives. And so I took a little more time to tell their story, how they died, how their bodies were recovered or not, and where they're buried. And there were three, for the most part, I collected information and decided how to present it, which was a lot of work, but something that anybody could have done, I think. But there are three things that I feel like I personally accomplished that I'm really proud of. Number one, the University of Michigan has a whole library devoted to this subject, devoted to the polar bears. And on their website, they have a roster of Kentuckians, or of soldiers that were in the polar bear expedition. And of the 220 Kentuckians that I identified, half of them were not listed. They just didn't know. It's not a complete list. And I was able to get their name, I was able to work with the staff of the University of Michigan Library and get those names added. So as far as I know, every Kentuckian is now listed on that roster. The individual that I mentioned that was from Kenton County, lived on DeCourcy Pike, he caught the Spanish flu, was so sick when he got there that they had to take him directly to the hospital, and he developed tuberculosis. And so before the ice froze them in, they wanted to evacuate those sick and wounded men, but the ship captains refused to take him because it said on his little hospital card that he had tuberculosis. So he stayed in the hospital getting sicker and sicker through the entire winter. And finally, when spring came and they could get the first evacuation ship into Archangel, one of the nurses went over and changed his card from tuberculosis to pneumonia. And he was able to return to the United States. The reason I bring him up is that the Kentucky Post did some articles about this at the time. These were contemporary stories. They were just heartbreaking. Talking about this soldier that was coming home, and his parents and his family and the newspaper knew he was going to die. But he didn't. He either didn't accept it or didn't know it. And he asked his parents to arrange for 2 Red Cross nurses to take care of him so that he could recover at home. And they did, even though they knew that it was probably going to be a waste of time. So he finally makes it back to the United States, and instead of sending him home to Covington, they sent him to a tuberculosis hospital in North Carolina, where he died very shortly thereafter, never getting to see his family. And so that story is just, as I say, is just heartbreaking. But because of the fact that he made it back to America, his name was not included as a casualty of the war. He made it home by the officials who run these things in Detroit, these polar bear memorials and things. And after I got a draft of my book and sent it to the president of the Polar Bear Association, asking him if he would just go through it, he got in touch with me and said that because of the way I laid it out, that they were going to add this guy's name to their list on the memorial list of casualties of the war. And I was really proud of that. The guy
Yes.
deserved it. He's buried in Mother of God Cemetery in Kentonville. So he never heard a gun fired in anger. He was never in the field. He never got off his sick bed, and yet he was definitely a casualty of the war. And let me show you a couple of these illustrations. This was the shoulder patch that they developed actually in Russia while they were there. They said, we need a patch for our unit, and so that became the official patch on the uniform. Now, I mentioned that some of the replacement troops came from France. And later on, in about April, the British command asked for some help with the railroads in northern Russia. And so the American military put out a call for volunteers to go to northern Russia and work on the railroads. I think they kind of gave them the impression to go to northern Russia and help get our guys out of there. So 1,500 troops in France, these were hardened veterans. They'd already been through the war, and for 6 months or whatever, volunteered to go to Russia. 700 of them were chosen to go to Russia. So with the replacement troops, those are the only troops that ever served in both places. When you got your World War I Victory Medal, they would give you little clasps, as you can see, to put on there showing what theaters of action that you had fought in or served in. And there are only about 1,200 people in the history of the United States military that could wear the France and the Russia service clasp. And at least 4 of them, maybe 5, were from Campbell County.
Wow.
Peter Wagner, who served with the, or I'm sorry, not Peter Wagner, he didn't. There was a Private William Peter Fassler. He was from Newport, born in Newport. Lieutenant Walter Henderson Dressing. Earl Dietz, is that the way you pronounce that? D-I-E-T-Z? Dietz. And Private Leo Joseph Trout. Those were all replacement troops. So they had served, they'd only served a month in France, but they had served there, and they were entitled to wear that service clasp along with the Russia one. This is Lieutenant Dressing. He was born in Newport, enlisted from Campbell County to go to Officers Reserve Training. But unlike a career military man, he was kind of, he could kind of act like a civilian, and got himself in trouble for having kind of a smart mouth. He was trying to protect his troops, but he wasn't very well respected by the British because he said what was on his mind. He survived the war and came home and got married within a week of his return from Russia before he had even been discharged. This is William Peter Fassler. It says Fessler on there, but he's a Fassler. There was a Fessler from Covington, and I've always wondered if they have any connection to the restaurant in Bellevue.
Yeah.
And we go there all the time, my wife and I, and every time I go in there, I'm going to ask that guy if he's related. They were so busy, I couldn't bother him. But this photograph was in the Kentucky Post, and you can see he's dressed up in his Russian. That photo was taken in Russia. This was Earl Dietz. He was a Campbell County deputy sheriff and Newport City Commissioner and Vice Mayor at one time. He's buried in Evergreen.
Still a prominent name.
This is Leo Trout and I guess his wife. He was a replacement troop.
I started the dairy.
The Trout chapter of the Disabled American Veterans is named for his son, who was killed in World War II. He's buried at St. Stephen at Fort Thomas. He was the owner of the Wagon Wheel Cafe, which I'm not familiar with. And this, I want to talk for just a minute about this man. Am I going on too long here? I don't want to overstay my welcome, but I'll wrap this up really quickly. PFC William Joseph Lehman was born in Fort Thomas, and that's about all of his connection to Campbell County. his family moved to Illinois when he was a child. But I wanted to mention his story because this is one more thing that I'm proud of. And that is, if you remember when I showed you the map, they moved down the rivers. And so there finally came a time, it's hard to even describe this, but one day in January of 1919, it's 40, 50 below zero. His unit, Company A, had gone about as far inland as anybody had gone or was going to go. And so one morning they looked up, and in the distance they saw they were on a little hill that was kind of three-sided hill, and then a great big plane went off to the back, this much snow. And their lookouts, as soon as the sun came up, they looked out and saw in the snow thousands of Russians coming their way, all dressed in white. So they sounded the alarm that they were getting ready to be attacked. What they didn't realize that under that hill, they were coming up all three sides. They were hundreds more that they were just looking off in the distance. So immediately they were surrounded on three sides. And it just turned into the worst kind of combat you can imagine. There was only about 50 people in this location, including several Kentuckians and laymen. So they fought as best they could. I mean, there was thousands of them coming up over this hill, and they were just machine gunning them down, these Russians, but still, it wasn't going to work. The problem was there was only one way out, and that was to the rear, and it was just a big, long, flat, white plain, where if you ran across that, you were just an easy target. But there wasn't anything else to do. And so they finally got the order to retreat. And as they did, one of the soldiers who is kind of an honor at Campbell County, and he never lived in Campbell County as far as I can tell, but he grew up his whole life on Mount Adams, so he was looking right down on Dayton and Bellevue. And I can see Mount Adams from when I was writing this book from my desk, so I kind of had to include him. His name was Victor Steyer. So he's part of this group, he's fighting, he gets his jaw shot off. And so he was ordered to retreat, get back. But as he was going, he picked up a machine gun from a dead Russian and started fighting again to give some time to the other soldiers to get out of there. And then he got killed in that second batch. So he, for his bravery in that engagement, he was posthumously awarded the Silver Star and later the Distinguished Service Cross, which is the second. It's right below the Medal of Honor as far as the rank of awards for bravery and courage in battle. Layman was injured, but he made it across the white field. Out of the 50 soldiers that were there, I think maybe 6 made it. The others were just shot down. And of course, they couldn't pick them up because the Russians were coming from every direction, so they just had to leave them, injured, dead, whatever. They were able to recover a few. So the ones that made it finally got back to the American lines, and so the British ordered a general retreat. We're getting out of here. So all these thousands of troops started a retreat back up the river. And it's awful. It was 40, 50 degrees below zero, and snow up to your waist, and there was no roads. They had a trail, they could go single file, and they started and they did not stop. They didn't stop to eat, they didn't stop to rest. They went on for like 2.5 days. And finally, they got to a fairly protected area and joined another company of Americans and decided they were going to rest for, a few hours and get something to eat. They took all their wounded and put them in a barn, and whatever bodies they had recovered, put them in this barn. So after a few hours of rest and nutrition, the British command said, we gotta go again. The Russians are still coming. And so the British command said, we are going to leave our wounded. The Russians will take care of them under the Geneva Convention, which I didn't know existed even back in World War I. And the Americans and the Canadians flat out refused that command. They said, we are not leaving our wounded. We'll leave the dead. And as a matter of fact, they made arrangements with a YMCA man who was with them. They gave him some money and said, would you make sure that our dead are buried? Hire some locals and here's some money and take care of their burial. And the YMCA man agreed to that. The rest of the wounded they loaded in these carts, 2 to a cart, gave them a drink of rum and covered them up, took off through the woods. There was thousands of people because so many civilians joined them. So they're going through the woods, single file. But every single book, every single story that I read about this indicated that they were very proud of the fact that they took their wounded with them. They left no wounded behind. And so I finished my book. As far as I was concerned, I'd done all I could do. And I thought, I'm going to go through one last time and just go through my notes. I had this big Excel spreadsheet of notes and just see if maybe I missed anything. And I came across something that just didn't jive with what I had written. And it turned out that in 1934, when that final recovery mission went back to Russia, Russia allowed them to come, gave them assistance in trying to locate the bodies. The report of that indicated that they went to look for his grave because he had died there in this little town. And they ran into this elderly Russian woman, who had done some nursing of the Americans. And she said, you won't find his grave here in this town. He was still alive when you left. And one other soldier. And when the Russians got here, they took them out in the woods, and they're buried. She told them where she thought they were buried. And the team went out there, and sure enough, they found the graves right where she said that they were buried. And when they dug his body up, it was brutally tortured. Now, you can wonder if that was while he was still alive or after he died. They had a habit of doing that to the bodies, but you kind of figure it was while he was alive. That information had never been put together as far as I can tell. Nobody had ever connected those two things. Of course, the fact that most of these guys did not have any descendants, no kids, they were single. So, this story just kind of gets forgotten. But they missed those two, not on purpose, but they were able to recover his body and brought him back to Illinois, and he's buried there. But he was born in Fort Thomas. This is Private Frank Dickman. He's the one that was sick, who got tuberculosis and was brought back. Like I say, he lived in Covington. This is the Polar Bear Monument Memorial in Whitechapel Memorial Park Cemetery in Troy. It's just a little north of Detroit. An amazing sight. All those bodies that were recovered, if the family allowed, are buried in a circle around that memorial. Quite a few of the veterans wanted to be buried there next to their comrades. So there's a bigger circle outside of that where they were allowed to buy plots. Victor Steyer is buried there from Mount Adams, and one other Kentuckian. The plaque there says, "In memory of the veterans of the North Russia Expeditionary Forces." This is a, if I can get it to work, this is a short video of their arrival in Archangel. You can see the big cathedrals. The American soldiers were very fascinated by that. The Davina River there, as you come into Archangel, is several miles wide. It's like the Mississippi. Just a couple of quick, I don't want to spend too much time. This is them getting off the boat, disembarking. There's an amazing number of these videos on YouTube. If you have any interest, you just go look up 339th Infantry. And there's a couple of historians that are taking these and colorizing them and making them at 4K. I don't know how you do that, how you improve the quality of it, but they did it. And corrected the speed of it so that it looks normal and not quicken like that. So it's amazing to me that they've got video of that. This is a video of a patrol in the woods, and even though I'm pretty sure this was staged for the cameras, you get the idea of what it was like. One of those guys there was a Kentuckian. I'm not sure which one of them, but he was identified in his Signal Corps notes. And finally, this is a cemetery. They created a cemetery procession, funeral procession. They created an American cemetery there in Archangel. And so a Kentuckian is in that funeral procession, is one of the bodies that they're taking to the cemetery. One last thing I wanted to mention, and I may be telling you something that you already know. In 2021, the World War I Memorial was open to the public in Washington, D.C. It's right adjacent to the White House grounds. It's right in front of the historic Willard Hotel. And one of the things that they did for the centennial of the World War I, of the war, was something that is truly impressive. And I've seen it 3 times. Every day at 5 o'clock, regardless of the weather, without fail, they have a soldier dressed in World War I uniform come out into the memorial. There's no announcement, there's no build-up, there's no big ceremony. This soldier comes out and plays taps at 5 o'clock every afternoon, and then turns around, salutes, and walks away. It's an amazing thing to see. I think every American, if you're anywhere near Washington, should try to go and see that. And I don't think people are aware of it. One of the times that I was there, there was a large group of really fully dressed military men and women. I mean, they had on their full dress uniforms, walking by just as that was going on, and they never even turned their head. And I know they didn't do that on purpose. Like, you wouldn't do that if you were a serving officer in the military. I just don't think they knew that what it was. And you'll see people that are just kind of like, what is that noise that I'm hearing? But every time that I've been there, you'll look way off in the distance and there'll be a guy standing there saluting, taps, and you know that he's a veteran. He knows what's going on. So it's a very impressive thing. They do it every day. It's on YouTube. They post those to YouTube every day. And rain, shine, whatever. And the times that I've been there, you will see people go up to the bugler and thank them for doing that. And so some people know. And I think over time it will become a thing that if you're in Washington and it's 5 o'clock, that you'll just kind of swing by there. It's right in the heart of town. Thank you for your attention. I'm sorry I went a little long. I'll have the vote.
Anybody have any questions for Jim?
Help yourself to looking at some of the books that I used in my research.
And he does have books available, his book, if you'd like to purchase one this evening, for, how much are they? $30? $30 for his
Includes
book.
tax.
He has them right here, or you can buy them,
Unfortunately, online they're $50 and plus shipping. That all goes to Amazon. I don't get any of that. So that's how much of a markup the Amazons of the world, Barnes and Noble put on.
Well, I was gonna say, the woman nurse was right, it wasn't tuberculosis, it was tuberculosis is a slope. And with this influenza, it comes on so fast with young people because they don't have immunity, and they start to bleed from the ears and the mouth, and they die usually within a day or two. And the lungs collapse with pneumonia.
yeah, but he lasted.
He lasted a year.
Yeah.
And there, tuberculosis, one of the soldiers from Greenwood County died in the 50s, and on his death certificate it says tuberculosis. He died in the TB hospital in Ashland. It says tuberculosis from his service in Russia. I mean, he had it for 40 years, 30 or 40 years.
Wow.
Did you?
How come the 17 were not recognized in the government documents? You said that the 17 men
Who lost their lives?
that were not listed.
Most of them weren't. It's just that they were recognized as being casualties if they died over there. If they made it home, I guess the thought, there's 6,000, and so they can't, these are just, this is not the government saying this is just a group of historians in Detroit and Michigan that have taken this on themselves. So, they just couldn't devote the time to these particular 17 that I was able to.
I'm not clear about why did we send, I was always under the impression that World War I, that we were fighting the Germans. And from this, I'm seeing that we were actually fighting the Russians. And I'm kind of foggy about that, what the whole thing was about. Why we went over there, and you just said first it wasn't the fight, but then it began. But I didn't know we were fighting the Russians. Were they allied with the Germans in World War I?
Half of the white Russians were allies, and then right in the middle of all this, they had a civil war, and they divided into white and red Russians, the Bolsheviks. So the British wanted to protect their economic investments, so did France, and so they used us to fight. And the worst thing about it is, and I failed to mention this, the armistice in France was November the 11th, 1918, 11/11 at 11 a.m. The fighting for these guys didn't even really start until then. They fought 6 months until May of 1990, after the armistice. The war was over. Russia was our ally. And yet, the president allowed this to go on. They were kind of forgotten. And
were they attacked then when they got there? Is that?
It's very weird to read on more than one occasion, several occasions. They were surrounded and could have been wiped out, and the Russians just kind of let them go. And so I think what made them mad was when the armistice came, if the Americans or the British or whatever had said, look, we can't get out of here, we're iced in until May. We're going to go back to Archangel, we're going to mind our own business. You leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. I think they would have all made it. but they didn't. They stayed out into the areas they had penetrated into, and the Russians finally just said, we've had enough. The Bolshevik Russians. And there were white Russians fighting with us. So when you read these books and they say Russians did such and such, you're thinking, well, now, wait a minute, which Russians are we talking about? Are these the ones on our side or on that we're fighting against? And, you know, they could have kept coming once they saw that we were retreating, and they knew that troop transports were coming to get us. They kind of let us go at that point. But they could have wiped us out whenever they wanted to. We just didn't have the sense to get out of there. And the men knew this. They knew what was going on. And so they were very bitter after it was over. And those that still have children today, you talk about bitter, they hate Woodrow Wilson, what happened to their parents, their fathers.
So there were 5,000 Americans that were sent up there under British command. How many British troops were up there? Any idea?
I think the total was 22,000, and that included French, British, there was all kinds of troops. There was Italians, Poles, but I think the majority were the British. The Americans had the feeling, though, that the British put us out in front. We're the ones actually doing the fighting. They're the ones back in Archangel having parties, which is somewhat true.
Wow.
So they probably had about 7,000 or 8,000.
Any other questions for Jim? Then I say thank you very much.
Can I just tell people what I thought of the book?
Okay. I
I
can't keep you quiet anyway.
Jan Lester asked me to read this book for the newsletter, and I'll read anything, so I said, okay. But when she told me what it was, it showed me the book, I'm going, oh my God. Because I don't have a head for war, I don't know anything about war, this is just not something but I have to tell you, this was a good book. I read a lot of history, and this is one of the best organized books about the people. It's about the people, not the war, the way he's got laid out. And the second part, he talked about, the second part of the book is the recovery effort. That was as compelling as the labor. So, that was really something. The recovery effort, the repeated three recovery efforts. That was, I think, it was really something. So I would recommend that you read this book. And also there's, several indexes. So that, a lot of that book is reference material so that you can keep it all straight in your mind. Because it's a lot of characters, like you said, it's a lot to kind of keep track of. But the way he's got laid out, it's really good. And I would recommend it highly. It's probably one of the best war books I've ever read, but in Kentucky history, I'll put it up there in one of the 10 best Kentucky history books I've read. So I would recommend it highly.
There you go. Very good. Does anybody else have anything for this evening? Any other statements, comments? No?
Thank you.
Oh, one in the back here.
I would like to thank Shirlene. I had a 97-year-old vet come to the Campbell Media, and she really facilitated archiving the things that I gathered. And it's on YouTube, or it's on the website. His name is Albert Dricking, if you want to look it up. It's really a great story.
That's part of our Veterans of Valor program that she does. And if anybody has a Campbell County veteran that would like to be interviewed, please talk to Shirlene and we'll make arrangements. I think she's very, very smart about this. She's not a veteran. And she knows that veterans talk to other veterans. And so she brings another veteran with her when they do those interviews.